I'm here with George Lazenby. George, thank you very much for joining us. I would ask you about James Bond and how it all kind of eventuated and finished up, but
Hmm.
you're probably sick of that by now, aren't you?
Depends how much I'm getting paid.
Fair enough. I want to ask more about kind of after that. In Universal Soldier, you just mentioned a second ago Jimi Hendrix. Was he also going to play a role in that as well?
No,
No?
Jimi Hendrix was going out with an ex-girlfriend of mine that was still living at my house,
Okay.
and so that's how I met him. He came there with his bass player, and I said, "Jimmy, I got an idea. I'm doing a movie. How about doing the music on it?" And he just looked at me like a fool and didn't say anything. And then I went down the Isle of Wight where he was playing, and it started to rain. And there was little caravans out the back of the Isle of Wight, and I went in there, and then Jimmy came in to get out of the rain. And I thought, this guy doesn't say much, so I won't say anything to him. And he looked over and he said, I'm going to do he had seen the movie, a rough cut of Universal Soldier. And he looked at me and he said, I'm going to do the music on your movie. I went, wow, this is something. And then a couple of weeks later, he was found dead.
What was it like that short time getting to talk to Jimi Hendrix? Obviously, you said he's a bit of a quiet guy. What was it like knowing that he was also seeing your ex-girlfriend?
Ah, well, that I knew all about, so I didn't have to find out about that. But she was, very free-spirited person, and she ended up learning the guitar like Jimi Hendrix after he passed away.
One of your films also following that, you signed a 3-film deal with a Hong Kong company, and you starred with Jimmy Wang Yu in The Man from Hong Kong.
Hmm.
Heard stories that he was a bit difficult to deal with off camera. What was it like starring in those 2 films with him?
Well, I had to fight him twice. He just jump on you all of a sudden, white suit and all, you're ready to go, and I wasn't going to let him beat me up. So we had some ding-dong goes at each other a couple of times. I don't think he liked Australians or whatever, because I had never done anything to him, apart from telling him that I thought Bruce Lee was better than him.
And you got to meet Bruce Lee as well, didn't you? And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was part of the deal. You were going to originally star with Bruce Lee?
That was the idea. I was broke, and I was in London thinking I couldn't get arrested on a Western movie. I was blacklisted, so to speak. And so someone said, this guy, Bruce Lee, he's hot. And I didn't have any money, and I went and got a charter ticket to Singapore. Then when I got there, I found out he was in Hong Kong. So I talked Cathay Airlines into giving me a ticket, and they'd give me one way. I said, but I got to get back. They couldn't believe I had no money, being the James Bond, you know. And so I got there, and I still hadn't rung Bruce. And then I found out his studio is way out in the countryside. And I only had a bus fare. So I got on this bus with all these people with dogs and cats and all kinds of animals. And then this typhoon started, the biggest typhoon that's ever hit Hong Kong. And I got into Bruce's studio just before it started to pick up steam. And Raymond Chow was the producer, and he was so happy to see me. And then he called up Bruce. He said, George Lazenby's here. Do you want to see him? And Bruce said, no. So I'm back out in the typhoon. And then this little Mercedes pulls up. And I could hear, get in. They had the window down about this far. Get in. And I could see there was a girl in the front, Mr. Hong Kong driving, and a guy curled up in the back that was Bruce Lee. And I said, where? He said, she'll get out. You jump in. So we did that. And I won't tell you what they talked about while she was sitting on my lap. But then they did. I said, what are you guys talking about? Because they're in Chinese, you know. Yeah. And you can guess. And meanwhile, we get to a restaurant, and Bruce is talking about how long it'd take to knock Raymond out, 1 second, his wife 1 minute, because she's a black belt, which put Raymond down. And then Mr. Hong Kong, maybe a minute. And he said, how long would it take for me to beat you? And I said, well, as long as it took to catch me, I guess. And he thought, good answer. Give George $10,000. I got to do a film with him. And he could see I didn't have any money. I had clothes that were out of date, and I'd come on a bus. And so he took me to the bank after the typhoon and opened a bank account, and we hung out for 3 days talking about what we're going to do. And then he said, I got a headache at lunch on the 3rd day. And you don't think of anything when people say they got a headache. You think, well, you get over it. And I said, don't bother coming to dinner tonight because I'm leaving tomorrow. And he said, no. I said, I'll be there. and I was having dinner with Raymond Chow in a Japanese restaurant, which is Bruce's favorite food. And I said to Raymond, he's never been late in 3 days. I better give him a call. He said, he's not at home, he's with his girlfriend. I said, give me the number. Betty Tim Pei, I think her name was. And I called her, and she said, I can't wake him up. I said, I'm calling back in 5 minutes. If you don't wake him up, I'll call an ambulance, because she didn't want to get the bad publicity. And I called back, and she said, he's in an ambulance going to the hospital. And I thought, well, he'll be okay. And then I got in my hotel room, and the phone was ringing. Bruce Lee's dead. What do you think? What could you say? And I stayed around for his funeral, thing the next couple of days. And then when I went back to London, Raymond rings me up. He says, you owe me $10,000. I said, what? That was Bruce's money, not yours. He said, no, it was my money. You got to do a film for me. And I said, well, I don't do kung fu. And he sent this crazy guy from Singapore. He used to train the police there. It was up for murder. So he had to run to Hong Kong. And he sent him over to me.
So you were there pretty much the night that, I wouldn't say with Bruce Lee the night he died, but close enough.
I had lunch with him that day and breakfast. We were talking day and night. 3 o'clock in the morning, he'd ring me up and say, what do you think of this idea? Call me back. I go, oh, Jesus. He doesn't rest, And he was a good guy. We got along because we both knew Krishnamurti and about him, and we read his books. Bruce had all his books, and I'd been to see him in India. And that's the first thing Bruce said turned him on to me, because in the car he said a line, and I said, that's not your line, that's Krishnamurti. And he said, you read Krishnamurti? I said, yeah, I've been with him in India for 2 weeks.
And so what was Hong Kong like around that time after his death? You stayed for his funeral as well, being such a massive star.
Service. I think they took him back to America to bury him. He was so massive. I remember when we were in the car, I didn't put this in, the police came up and said, get off the road, can't you see there's a typhoon? Oh, Bruce Lee. And so they gave us a guide, to the restaurant. He was big, really big.
And just finally, the Man from Hong Kong, the film itself, while it was being shot, you had to do a couple of the stunts yourself, including one which involved you getting your hand set on fire. Didn't end too well, did it?
No. Well, when we did the rehearsal, there was carpet on the floor, and I said, I fall down here, then I get up and I throw these 2 punches, then you jump out of here, and I do that. So when the film, then they covered me in this oil that protects you from fire. Then they set me on fire. That's how stupid I was at the time. And then when I did the scene where I fall on the floor, I rubbed all the protective oil off my arm. And it just burned up. And that was no fun.
Did you ask for an extra bit of money for that as remuneration?
No, never thought. I was thinking of the arty side of life at the time. I think I should have asked for money. But, I mean, I'll never catch on fire again for a film.
Would you look at going back and doing any more acting in a feature-length role? Obviously, you mentioned Clint Eastwood as part of a reason why you left James Bond in a way. Would you look at him, how he's still going at his age? Would you consider maybe trying to do a Gran Torino-style movie?
Well, I mean, come on, Clint Eastwood, he's an icon. He knows the business better than I'll ever know it. And how to make movies, etc. But I admire the guy, even though I've only met him once. I saw him in a restaurant. I said, hey, Clint, when are we going to do a movie together? He said, what, do you got the tot? I mean, he'd come in with a thing and we'll work on it. But that was a long time ago. I got kids now, and I'm kind of content.
Fantastic. Well, George, thank you very much for joining us here today and part of Supernova as well. Enjoy the rest of your stay in Perth. I know you've got family here, so hope you enjoy it.
Thank you.